Welcome to Analyst Talk with Jason Elder. It's like coffee with an analyst, or it could be whiskey with an analyst reading a spreadsheet, linking crime events, identifying a series, and getting the latest scoop on association news and training. So please don't beat that analyst and join us as we define the law enforcement analysis profession one episode at a time.
Thank you for joining me. I hope many aspects of your life are progressing. My name is Jason Elder, and today our guest has 20 years of law enforcement analysis experience. She has a Master's of Science in Security Studies from Sam Houston State in Texas. She's a IALEIA Fiat instructor and currently the Strategic Outreach Committee Chair. Representing the great state of Texas, please welcome Brandy Schiber. Brandy, how are we doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing well. How is Texas these days?
The weather is bipolar. It's 40 in the morning and 80 in the afternoon. So other than that, we're surviving.
Well, wait a couple of months and it'll just be hot.
We're getting there.
All right. Very good. We got a lot to go over. Really interested in getting your perspective, your story, your journey. Obviously, we're going to talk about IALEIA, talk about standards, which is very important. But let's start from the beginning. How did you discover the law enforcement analysis profession?
I actually wanted to be a cop from the time I was about 3. And this is back in the 80s when the show Cops, I think it's still on, but this is back in the heydays, right? And so I remember watching Cops as a tot. Probably shouldn't have been watching it, but I was. That's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a cop. And as I got older, I was fortunate enough to go to a relatively large high school, and they had a criminal justice class, which at the time that was unheard of. But I was fortunate enough again to be at a relatively large, affluent high school. So I took a criminal justice class. And this is around the time that I realized you're 5'5" and 110 pounds, 115 on a heavier day, like you are going to get hurt, and you're also going to be a liability to every officer around you. So the chances that's going to happen are slim to none. You need to be looking at alternatives. So I was very much interested in psychology at the time. I was also in a psychology class that my high school had. So I leaned into the more of the analytics route. My intention was to go federal, and I was fighting between being a clinical psychologist who really wanted to work with people at the time. So this is the 9/11 era, and this is all culminating at the same time. And so I thought, I really want to work somewhere like Guantanamo Bay. That's what I want to do. I want to work with terrorists, and I want to understand things. And so that's where it became like this melding of criminal behavioral analysis and the psychology side of things, abnormal to clinical psych. And I luckily, when I started college, I was actually going to be a psychology major because I knew there's really not much you can do with a criminal justice degree. And that's still true today. And so, and I say that as somebody who was an academic advisor at a university at one point. There's not much that you can do with just a straight criminal justice degree in the criminal justice field, particularly at the time. So I was a psych major, and I had as a criminal justice minor at the time. And I had a professor who, during my first semester, he was like, hey, do you know what at the time, they were just crime analysts. And he was like, do you know what a crime analyst is compared to an intelligence analyst? And I was like, well, guess, maybe, really, I don't know. It's like that. I don't want to tell you, no, I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah. And he was like, well, he was a retired officer, and he was doing research. And he said, I really need somebody to do the analytical side of things. And so we ended up partnering. I was just getting the data side of information from some local agencies, which at the time was Tomball Police Department, and through whatever contact he had. And so that's really where the crime analysis side of things came. At the same time, I was planning, I'm still going to school more or less for the criminal psychology aspect of things that I was interested in. And as it progressed over time and I was exposed to more professors, I ended up dual degreeing and all of that, is when I really got interested in you can do intelligence analysis in law enforcement and not have to be basically, and it's not basically, it's very pointedly, I had a professor, he was a doctorate, obviously, and he was Steve Young, his name. He has passed. He was with the CIA. You can look him up. He's a great guy. He was an asset handler. And he was like, look, you can do what you want to do and not have to get a clinical psychology degree. He was like, if you go get a clinical psychology degree with the route I was on, he was like, you're not going to be able to do a lot of the things that you want to do because of the American Psychological Association and the credentials that you'll have. You will be limited. What you're thinking you're going to be able to do, you're not going to be able to do from an ethics standpoint, from XYZ. And I had a couple of clinical psychology professors, Dr. Christopher Wilson, who was Dr. Steve Young was the department chair for my master's program. And then Dr. Christopher Wilson was the department chair for the College of Humanities, I believe was the sum all, because again, I was getting a psychology degree. And he also talked to me. He was trying to pull me to the quote unquote dark side, keep going to the psychology side, keep going. And so I sat down with him and I'm like, realistically, like, this is what I wanted to do. I never thought in a million years I would be a crime analyst working with data, because I'm good at statistics, but I don't like them. I really don't like them. And so I never in a million years thought I'd be working with data, but here I am. And it was between the two of them tag teaming me that said, with what you want to do, you could go the clinical psychology route. However, with what you're wanting to do, again, you're not going to be able to do what you think you're going to be able to do because of ethics, because of all of these things that happen when you become a clinician. And I was like, you know what? That's not what I want to do. I want to dig. There's certain things that I want to poke and pry and do all of that. And that's really how it became. I went from criminal behavior psychology really into the crime analysis with Dr. Becker, and to both of them and many other professors. It wasn't just the two of them that essentially said, let's pull you back and forth and then make a decision. I made a decision, I think 2 weeks before graduate school. I had to have my deadline, my answer in on which program I was going to accept or go into, because I'd already been accepted. It was a matter of doing it.
Yeah.
And then I had another professor at the time who was a department chair who I loved, Dr. Patrick Lewis. He went to Duke and he was trying to pull me into, because I was also interested in forensic anthropology. And I'm naturally inclined for some reason towards biology. And I took pre-med classes as my science courses. I had to go get approval from department chairs to do all of this.
Yeah.
And so it was like getting pulled in all these directions. And it honestly was like a split-second decision of, I know I love science, but I don't want to do this all the time. So let's take the forensic anthropology off the table. The criminal psychology side of that's very interesting, but I don't want to be strapped with certain things that I can't do strictly out of it. And I understand it, out of an ethical standpoint of things you can and can't do, can and can't say. And then intelligence was just there. And as a byproduct in today's world, when I started this in 2006, crime analysis and intelligence analysis were two different worlds. You had crime analysts, which was very rare, especially in local law enforcement, or what I would consider very rare, to we had that shift towards intelligence because of 9/11. And then now you have crime analysts who should be able to do intelligence analysis function, and intelligence analysts who should be able, depending on where they're at, to do crime analysis function. So it all started from wanting to be a cop, to all of these fluid movements through professors and programs, and realizing what once was is no longer what it is now. And you really need to be able to do both. But honestly, at the end of the day, I love numbers and I love data. I'm interested in it, but Lord, I hate cleaning it and making it, doing all of those things. I would rather just do my intel. But oftentimes, because I'm such a advocate for intelligence-led policing, you need the data to be able to tell you where to focus at. And so that's the only, honestly, that's the only reason I work with data, is because I need it to be able to direct my function and intelligence. That's it.
It's pretty impressive, because it sounds like you were an academic rock star in a way, with these different professors trying to get you to come on their side of the fence.
Actually, my brain was studied in college.
Yeah.
I'm not joking. They tag teamed. This was between Patrick Lewis, Dr. Lewis, and then Dr. Wilson. So we figured out, I'm pretty certain I'm actually dyslexic. They didn't figure it out until I was about first grade, and they realized I had eidetic memory. So what we would call photographic memory. And it followed me pretty substantially all the way through college. That's how I ended up in the pre-med courses for science, is because they could not believe that I was a tutor at the
Mm-hmm.
time. Also, I was a preferred tutor from professors from the university because I could break down complex material. It's just the way my brain works.
Nice.
It was, yeah, it was interesting, but they actually did different studies on me and stuff like that, and because they couldn't understand how I could recall certain things, and I'm like, it fries into my brain. I don't
Huh.
know. I
It's
know it's
interesting that it's considered a dyslexia.
so they think what it was is it was compensation for dyslexia.
Okay.
And that was, if you remember back in the 80s, I don't know how, I know kids don't do it quite the same now because I have a 21-year-old and her academia was different than mine in primary school, but where you would get your spelling list, right? And you had to
Mm-hmm.
learn those words.
Yeah.
What they figured out with me is whenever the teacher would change the order of the words during the test, I would spell the words correctly, but not the word she asked for. I could imprint that exact list on my paper as I had studied
Oh.
it. And so that's really where it started. And they realized, oh, she's spelling the words correctly. That's just not the word we asked for. I was just verbatim putting it down. And so then they started doing additional testing on me. And they're like, she's got eidetic memory. She's using photographic memory essentially to just imprint whatever it is that she's observed onto paper.
Yeah.
And so it was interesting. Then they started doing it with images to see how quickly I could recall an image and the short amount of time that I saw that image. And it was fascinating. It was not fascinating at the time, but it was interesting as I got older to learn all these things about myself that I was like, oh, that's fascinating. I almost got held back 3 different grade levels because they didn't really understand what was happening. And so I had to go through IQ testing and all the testings for them to figure out that her brain is compensating in a different way.
Yeah. Well, and then back then, not being able to follow directions was a reason to hold you back.
Yes,
Right?
that was, yeah, they didn't know if I had the comprehension, but then when they sent me through the testing, they're like, she's like genius level, but we don't understand what's happening. So essentially my understanding is they chopped it up to I was more than likely dyslexic and that my brain was just compensating by learning to do what the common person calls photographic memory, eidetic memory. It was just copying and pasting what it saw, which it helped me. It helped me greatly in college. I was a straight A student. I was valedictorian and undergrad
That's
for both degrees, but I had to study. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't that easy. It wasn't just as simple as it was as a kid, but that did play a substantial part in it is that I have phenomenal recall
now,
to this
now does
day.
it last does it last over time? Do you still remember stuff years later?
The funniest thing is, so my nickname was Webster for a long time, just as the walking dictionary, because I know random things that I pick up along the way. And it's not consistent. It's just something like to this day, I will always remember that apoptosis is programmed cell death that happens between fingers and toes. It's one of the primary examples on a developing fetus. There are certain things that stand out, and I don't know why. It's very fascinating to me because it's nothing of importance. There are things that I wish I could remember, and I'm like, I don't remember that. But I remember what apoptosis is. Yeah, I remember certain other things. I don't know. It's very bizarre to me what sticks and what doesn't.
In that regard, I can relate to you because I feel that I remember odd stuff and then don't remember other things that I think I should remember. So,
Yeah.
but well, no, that's that's fascinating. We could have had several conversations over our lifetime that I not know that about you. So that's fascinating. So, all right, so let's get into graduate school then. What was the decision to go to graduate school in the first place, right? In lieu of just going out there and trying to find a job.
So the big thing is when you take into consideration this was the 9/11 era, and then our generation was told you go to college or you go to the military. That's what you do. This wasn't really a time where the trades were pushed heavily because we're coming out of my parents' generation was trade based. That's what you did. So we're into you go to college or you go into the military. And I definitely did not want to go into the military for a variety of reasons. Again, we're keeping in fact that I would have my butt handed to me if I were ever in a position. So let's take that. But again, I was just very interested in the psychology route of things, the human behavior, criminal analysis. And so I went the college route. And by the time this is happening, I'm graduating, and this is when the recession hits. And I'm like, you have to make a decision and you have to make a decision quickly. And I had a child. So I had my daughter when I was 19, and I was like, you have a child in the middle of this. What was once acceptable with a bachelor's degree is no longer acceptable. You need a master's degree because so
Mhm.
much had changed between graduation to the recession hitting. And so I was like, all right, we're going to go ahead and just do graduate school now. Because at one point I was like, I'm going to put it off. I'm going to go ahead and go into the field. I had already had a strong analytics background at this point. All through undergrad, I was working as an undergraduate research assistant in both in psychology specifically and criminology. I was working with professors, helping with research analysis, which includes crime analysis, right? And so I thought, just go into the field. It's starting to really kick off. Intelligence is a big thing. And I don't remember who it was, but somebody, it's probably my mother, to be honest, was like, look, if you don't go to graduate school now, you're not going to. You're going to fall into the lull of going to work and all of these things. And I was already working, but she was like, you're really going to progress that way. And I was working at the university at this point. Again, I was doing the academic tutoring. I was tutoring for over 20 classes. I was fine with that. And she's like, you can continue this. You can even get a job on campus and go to graduate school. Go, or you're going to regret it because you're not going to go if you take off. And I'm like, okay. So that's really what prompted it, was the economy and the fact that so much had changed. We're coming out of my parents' generation. You just needed a high school diploma. An associate's wasn't even necessarily a thing. To my generation was, you need not only an associate's, you need a bachelor's degree.
Yeah.
To now all of a sudden we're 4 years later and you need a master's degree.
Yeah.
And because I dual degreed, my undergrad took me 5 years. And so it was like, okay, you got to make a decision. They're saying graduate degrees are what you need right now. And that's really what it came down to. I was actually going to do my PhD. And then I was like, no, we're not doing this. We're not doing this. Because that's really where the clinical psych program came into play, is that I didn't want to be a school psychologist. There's nothing wrong with that. That's not what I wanted to go to school for. And so you get into it's essentially like a fast track PhD. So you do your grad as a whole. It's not
Mhm.
master's and PhD. And so there was a lot that went into that. And then when I went the security studies route, and I had a lot of people pushing me to either go to law school. The DA and the DA's wife, the assistant DA, was Kelly Weeks, was one of the professors, and she was pushing really hard. And a lot of people didn't know that I had a child because of my grades and because I was so focused on school. And then when she found out I had a child, she was like, oh, yeah, don't do that. She's, you're not going to survive graduate school with a child. You got to choose the kid or the school. And I was like, well, there's no, that's not a choice. And so that's really what it came down to, was economy and the shift in perception of a bachelor's degree was no longer going to cut it in this field. And it's bizarre to me because it seems like there's a lot of people who are finding that I'm meeting in this field who have master's degrees who are all saying the same thing. I only got it, not necessarily because I needed it at the time in terms of the field specific, but just the shift in the economy was, you need to go get a master's because a bachelor's is no longer sufficient.
Yeah, and it is fascinating, the mindset, because I share the same mindset that your mother had, in that if you don't do it now, you're not going to do it. And which seems probably a little silly today because people of all ages are getting degrees. But there was this notion of just get your education out of the way
Hmm.
and then focus on the profession later. I did something similar where I ended up staying around one extra year to get a master's degree. And so it was the same mindset as, well, if it's either now or never type of mentality.
And it's funny when you look at it, because again, now being older, you're like, I could do this. What was I thinking? But that was really the mindset, was you do it now. If you take off, you're not going to go back. It's going to be more difficult. You're already in the swing of things. And so I did it. I did, in fact. I survived grad school.
Let's talk about your graduate internship, because this is fascinating and we got a fascinating story that came out of it.
Oh, that's a lot. Yes. So I was with the Texas Office of the Inspector General, so it's the OIG, and they were the officers, or are the officers, state officers, that essentially investigate. They do intelligence and law enforcement investigations, mostly on corrections officers who are involved in things they should not be involved in, like
Mm-hmm.
bringing drugs and cell phones and stuff like that into the prisons. They also deal with things like outcries from inmates who state that they've been abused physically, sexually, stuff like that. So it was interesting. I ended up, the partner that I was teamed up with, he and I to this day, he's one of my best friends. He's like a brother to me. So that's a long-standing relationship. It's been, what year are we in? What are we in? 14 years? Something like that since this is, I'm losing all the time. Everything. So it's 14 years I developed this friendship. And however, they wanted me to come work for them, and I still would have had to be an officer and all of that, or I could have gone into the intelligence analyst side, but it was more of the investigations that I was interested in because a lot
Mm-hmm.
of the analysts spoke Spanish, and I don't speak Spanish and was not interested in learning Spanish, nor was I interested in translating and all of that. So as I'm sure I've shared, I did not like the smell of prisons. And I was like, this is not for me. Being constantly, because as you know, in a prison, when there's questions, people get strip searched.
Yeah.
So I saw more than my fair share of nude men and the smell. And I was like, this is not for me. No, there's
Yeah.
more power to those that do it, but that's not for me.
Yeah, we've talked on this show many a times of like how sometimes the internship introduces you to what you don't want to do
Yes.
instead of
And
what you do want to do.
yeah, and it was just a matter of where I was. I was in Huntsville. That's where Sam Houston State is, and that's where the headquarters for the Texas Corrections is. And it was a lot of things. And I loved the people. It
Mhm.
wasn't a problem like Jason, is still like a brother to me. It was not the relationships. It was just strictly, I don't want to work in a prison.
Uh-huh.
The smell is permanently fried into my brain. That will never go away. To this day, I will sometimes get interestingly, off of food trucks. I will occasionally smell it and I'm like, that smells like a prison. I'm not eating out of that food truck. I don't know what's happening in there.
Uh,
But yeah, it was a good experience. And I always tell people, if you can do internships, do an internship
yes.
because it exposes you to what you may want to do, what you know you end up you don't want to do. It's a great way to just learn, even if you don't end up staying with that agency or
Mhm.
office or whoever it is that you're with in whatever capacity. It's a learning opportunity. And you
Yeah.
never know, to this day, not only have Jason and I maintained a great friendship, like I said, he's honestly like a brother to me. That's how
Mhm.
close we are. But there are several other people who, from that internship, I still have communication with, still
Yeah.
reach out to, and off of an internship.
Yeah.
And so it's like those 6 months of your life, you never know the impact that it could have.
Absolutely. All right. Well, hey, though this leads into an analyst job. So you graduate, you get your master's, and then you actually head out of state to South Carolina.
I did. People ask me, they're like, why did you go to South Carolina? The honest answer to that is my
Oh,
sister
okay.
moved, and so I wanted to be closer to her. She had left the Plano area here in
Mhm.
Texas, and so she went out there, and I was looking for analyst positions, and somebody had said to me, I don't remember who it was, one of my professors or somebody, because again, I kept really close communication with people, were like, hey, there is a position that's opening up that's in South Carolina, and they have a very disproportionately large crime rate. And that's my jam. And I was like, yeah, but I really want to do intelligence. I don't want to do just what I call the data monkey, right? We're the
Yeah.
number monkeys. So I was like, I don't want to just do that. And it's a sheriff's office. And I don't know. And eventually I went out there. I went ahead and applied. It was close to my sister. I went out there. They were great people. I still to this day, they're family to me. Sheriff Barry Fail, he's still the sheriff to this day. And that was, I don't
Wow.
know, 14 years ago, something like that.
Yeah.
And they're good people.
Yeah.
I have nothing bad that I can say about that sheriff's department. I made really good relationships out there. They became like family. And I found it absolutely fascinating because they did have a relatively high crime rate. I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Why is this county? And I think there was a sum total of things that I learned as an analyst because again, that inquisitive mind and having done research, and we're talking about criminological theory and policing models that I did all through undergrad and graduate school, because at the same time, I am working as an academic advisor. I'm doing undergraduate and graduate research with these people. So I have a strong grasp of both criminal theory and policing models. And so when I got out there, it was like, oh, this county is on the North Carolina, South Carolina border. There are major thoroughways that are going straight from Florida all the way up. So you have a trafficking area. You have easily not only jumping jurisdictional lines, but state lines. There was a variety of things that came in from both, again, the criminal theory and then looking at the police model and what they were trying to do. And it's actually them that made me fall in love with intelligence-led policing, because they were doing CompStat, and I was trained with NYPD's traditional model. And so it was interesting to be able to take that and do something with it. And they were open to it. They're like, yeah, whatever you want to do. And so I was like, awesome. Watch this. And we had fun. Like I said, I have nothing bad. It's the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office. And to this day, I still keep in contact with a few of them, and they're good people. They really are.
Yeah, it's funny, as I don't know where Lancaster is, but as you were just describing it, I was like, I bet you there's a major highway going right straight through it.
Yep.
North, south.
It was a very large area. Obviously, it's it's county, so you've got different municipalities within that area. It was an area that used to be, back in the day, it was a manufacturing area, and so they had a lot of manufacturing, and then different things happened through the decades, and so poverty ended up taking hold in a lot of areas, and they lost their manufacturing power that they had. And so you had a lot of people who were unfortunately affected by that. And it's just, there was a lot of factors. It was really interesting to go into this, somebody saying, hey, you really should look at this. I think that it would pique your interest, because I'm always asking why. I'm like, there's a reason why. And I had a blast out there. They were really good people. It was a really great agency to work for. I miss them.
This is Robert Aboumitri, a retired analyst with the RCMP. If I have an advice for analysts, one advice: tell the story of the data. Do not tell the story of somebody who wants a story to be told. Even if it's your boss, even if it's the chief of police, and they tell you to show something, and as a result of your analysis, do not. Stay true to what's in front of you. Let the data speak to you, and you be the voice of that data.
My name is Megan Cruz. I'm the crime analysis supervisor at Richmond Police. And my public service announcement is knowing how much the data and the information that crime analysts touch applies to everything the department does. Everything from media responses to patrol allocation to solving crimes to overtime allocation, that commanders really should be tapping their crime analysts before they make any kind of decisions. Everything should be evidence-based and data-driven.
Hello, my name is Greg Thomas. One phrase that annoys me that analysts say is that they say that when they introduce themselves, they say, I am just an analyst. You should be proud of your profession and the field and the job that you do, and don't say you're just an analyst.
All right. Well, this brings us to the analyst badge story, one of a couple that you're going to share with us today. And for those that may be new to the show, the analyst badge story is the career-defining case or project that an analyst works. So you mentioned the CompStat, you mentioned getting into the data. This deals with some predictive analysis that you came up with.
Yes. So anybody who's in the field should know who Dr. Rossmo is, Kim Rossmo. He does geographic profiling. I am always, again, I strongly believe that we can predict with relative accuracy. And I know AI is, for a lot of people, they're like, oh, AI is going to take our job. But the reality is AI has been around for quite some time, it wasn't necessarily at our fingertips in the way that we're utilizing it now. But when you talk about predictive modeling through GIS and stuff like that, was AI. It was some form of artificial intelligence that's doing computations on your behalf and making these predictions based off of what it's seeing. So the case that you're talking about was when I got the WIT award. It was the Whatever It Takes award. That was in when I was with and by the way, it's not Lancaster, it's Lancaster.
Lancaster. Yeah, I should know that because there's Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and I'm from
Yes.
Pennsylvania, so I almost pronounced it that way, but I was like, oh, it might not be the same.
I know, it's funny because I used to say when I got there, I said Lancaster, and they're like, it's Lancaster. And I'm like, okay, it took me forever to get it down. But so when I was there, we had a serial robbery suspect that was hitting, I don't remember the exact details. I know there was an analyst with CMPD, which is Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Department, and there might have been another one. I have to think. There was a few. We were picking up, again, this is the 9/11 era, right? So one of the things that we learned, which is so important in intelligence, is sharing. It doesn't matter what you know if you don't share it. And so bulletins were flying. When I came in, I was like, you guys need to be pushing out information. You need to be actually reading what's coming in. Don't just be on these email lists and you're not actually taking anything that you're getting. And so there was a few robberies that I had seen, and they were at gas stations. We had, I think, one or two as well. And I'm like, I'm pretty certain that this is the same subject. And I had reached out, or she had reached out to me. We got into communication, me and another analyst with a different, I believe it's CMPD, and working this and putting all of these together. And we both got into this, let's predict, where do we think he's going to hit next? Yeah. And there was a prediction made, and in that prediction, it was all the way down to, I had a specific gas station. I was like, I think this is where he's going to hit based off of the pattern that I'm seeing, what we call now days between hits, the pattern of the movement all the way up. I want to say he had hit Tennessee, Georgia. He hit us in South Carolina, North Carolina, and I think like Virginia. There was several states involved by the time we got done looking at essentially this series. It was spree and series. It was interesting because he would do hit and then disappear for a bit. And so we're assuming he probably was other places we had not detected. We don't think it ever actually just stopped. We think that he was just out of our view, and did a prediction on when and where he was going to hit. And I'll be damned if it wasn't the exact gas station. And it was when I thought it was going to be. Yeah. We were able to positively identify the subject, and then beforehand made some predictions, and that's actually where he hit. So I ended up getting an award for that one. That was the Whatever It Takes award.
Nice. And you got was the day and time correct as well?
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, but that also came, part of that was off of just stuff. Again, I think people should know who Kim Rossmo is. If you don't know geographic profiling and his work, I am in no means an expert in it, but I love to study it. I think it's advantageous for anybody, whether you're doing just straight crime analysis or intelligence, and you want to better understand how an offender operates in the area of which they're operating. Yeah.
What was the MO with this case?
Oh, Lord, you had to ask me that one.
Yeah.
I know that it was gas stations. I remember it was armed robbery. And I want to say, if I remember correctly, he was going into gas station. Oh, I do remember this. He was looking for gas stations close to the highway because it was easy in, easy out. Yep. It was in the evening hours. And if I'm not mistaken, he was picking weekdays, not weekends, because he knew that there would be one person at the register in the store, and there was less likely to have foot traffic from customers. And he was in and out. I don't remember the vehicle he drove to, but it was something, I'm just going to say a vehicle, but I don't think this was actually, it was like a silver Kia Soul. It was something that was very unique. And so you had enough cases where we were seeing a silver box car, a car that looked like a box. Whatever it was distinctive. You have to excuse me because it's been a long time since I even remember the details of this. But it was enough that we were able to say we're relatively certain it's the same subject. And of course, the question that everybody always asks is, people in my world at least, and I'm sure every other analyst, investigator's world, is, do you guys really get better camera images than that, video images? And the answer is no, we don't. What on the news is what we see. And that actually reminds me, I did. That's how it started. I saw the guy, because I lived in North Carolina. I worked in South, lived in North, right over the border. I had seen, that's where it started. I saw a news story with the CCTV from one of the things. And then that's when I realized, hey, that's the same guy that we had. And then I started digging through the bulletins to look for any generalized description. That's what it was. I'm so glad you said that. But that prompted my memory. Was it came from the news. That's another thing I think analysts should do. Watch the news. You
Yeah.
never know what you're going to see that might not necessarily deal with your jurisdiction, but will have implications in your jurisdiction at some other time.
Yeah. One time, one of my targets that I was working on, he ended up crashing his plane, and it was on the main page of CNN
See?
because
You never
they
know.
found cocaine, a bunch of cocaine in there, and
Yeah.
it was the guy that we were targeting. So, but no, I think that's fascinating. Yeah, I'm just thinking with the grainy footage, we're getting all these Artemis 2, like these picture perfect images
Yes.
of the moon coming in.
I know. And that's what everybody
I
always asks me. They're like, really? Like we get satellite image. And I'm like, no, what is really what we're getting
yeah,
as well. And the funny thing is that it's just in the commission of doing my job.
yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? And that's what
Hmm.
people ask me. Like, I don't think I deserve some amazing award because I did something extraordinary. You got officers out here putting their life on the line who are literally getting awards for saving lives or whatever. And this was just one of those instances where I didn't even remember it until we started talking about it, the prompting from the news story, and then going through the bulletins and realizing, hey, whatever it was, a silver boxy car, and going, I think this is the same guy. And then getting with another analyst and kind of mapping out what we were seeing off of multiple jurisdictions, multiple states, and being able to do between hits analysis and determining he's picking gas stations that are, if I remember correctly, we had it down to a science. If he was literally picking gas stations, like I do remember this, we could tell when he was going northbound versus south because he would only hit gas stations on the right side of the road when he was going northbound, and when
Yeah,
he was coming southbound he was only, and that's when we're like, okay, he's picking based off of whether he's headed north or south, and he was literally going up and down.
yeah.
And yeah, it was just a variety of factors. It's where crime analysis comes into play, and then you get the intel side in there, which is once we get digging into the vehicles and figuring out who this guy is, and then being able to put him at different places at different times in different states because he has to buy gas sometime. There was certain things that, yeah, I don't remember everything that the investigators had, but it was really cool to be able to then say we basically moved off of his vehicle. His vehicle and using a gun. I don't remember. The gun was described with some relative accuracy because it was something odd. It was like, I don't remember. I'd be lying if I say something, but I'm just going to say like a revolver. Like it was
Yeah.
something at the time that was unique. It wasn't, it was like, okay, I'm relatively certain that this is the same guy.
Yeah. And I think when it comes to geographic profiling, I think half the battle is just making sure that all the cases are connected.
That's the hard part. Yeah. And I think the other issue is it's not just all of the cases there, but some cases that can realistically look like it's the offender and it's not, because there were a few that I remember that we looked at and they were very similar, but we did not feel confident. We felt confident enough to know that I don't think this is the guy. I really genuinely can say I don't think this is him, even though everything seems to line up.
Very good. Man, that's a good case. All right, well let's move on then, because you do end up coming home to Texas,
I do.
leaving South Carolina to come back to San Antonio. Was just the decision to come home? Is that
So
what
it was a
happened?
couple of things. After that case, I ended up in a few other cases. I was noticed by the Fusion Center liaison there that was with DHS. And so he reached out to me at the time. I was like, hey, we're interested.
Yeah.
And so I ended up going to FLETC and did the DHS IATP course, and then came back and was utilizing that. And when I really did love my family in South Carolina, I love being close to my sister, and the SO was family. However, with that being said, I'm a Texas girl. And they eat pork and I eat beef. And it was also really interesting because unsweet tea is a thing out there. So Texas is sweet tea and beef. And South Carolina is fatback, pork, and unsweet tea.
Yeah.
And so people are like, why'd you come back? I'm like, the food. I needed to eat.
Love it.
I needed to eat. No, they really did have good food, but the beef and the sweet tea thing was a difficult one for me. But at the end of the day, my parents were here. I had my daughter. I was married at the time. And so my now former husband, he wanted to come back to Texas. And so he worked for the Department of Criminal Justice and the prisons. And so
Okay.
again, another reason I was not a fan.
Yeah.
So it was just really a lot of things that brought us back. And because I, at that point, had undergone quite a bit of training, more hands-on, less academia, and getting my feet wet. I had over the years with different agencies, like I said, for the 2 years that I worked with Dr. Becker and stuff like that, but it wasn't, or Professor Becker, it wasn't working for a law enforcement agency full time. You're knee deep in all of this stuff. And I was like, I really want a challenge. And so San Antonio PD opened up in Southwest Texas Fusion Center, and I put in for it and I got it. And it was a huge change of pace to go from a county of 1,000 or 100,000 citizens. Now, granted, they had a pretty large crime rate for their size, to the 7th largest city in the U.S.
Yeah.
That was a big jump.
And you're working major crimes with the Fusion
Yes.
Center.
So it was with Strategic Intelligence and Analytics and Southwest Texas Fusion Center, like it's under one umbrella, or it was at the time. I'm not sure how they've separated things now. And I was working major crimes, predominantly violent major.
That brings us to another bad story that you have, because it's here that you work on the serial rapist case.
Yes. So I had, well, there's actually two.
Okay.
There's two. One is a group who are sexually assaulting, robbing, and stealing the vehicles of sex workers. And so they'll go to their hotels as a John. They end up, one person turns into upwards of 5 in some of these cases. And most sex workers are not going to report that sort of thing.
Sure.
So they were violently sexually assaulted, robbed, and then if they had a vehicle at the location, it was taken. So several of these cases are happening. My supervisor comes to me, and it was weird the way that Southwest Texas Fusion Center and SIA was set up at the same time, Strategic Intelligence and Analytics, because I was specifically working cases with both, but under SIA, and we were under the same super, but not, it was very odd at the time. All that's been corrected is my understanding. So my supervisor came to me, he said, look, I want you to do something with this because there's somebody assigned to this and there needs to be something moving faster on it. And I was like, cool, got it. So I ended up looking at a variety of cases, and you could see where there was 2 to 5 offenders that would go in, same kind of MO. They're hitting these sex workers and in and out. And without going into too much detail, essentially, once we started bringing additional investigators in, the lead investigator was assigned to it. And there was some contention over my involvement in this. And my supervisor told me, do not back down. You're going to work this because the other analysts had their opportunity. It's not working out for them. We need something done fast. And I'm like, okay. So I ended up, one of the biggest questions I had is, where are the cars turning up? Where are the cars being recovered? Because everybody was so focused on where the crimes were happening off of the major highways. Same exact thing. We didn't know if the people lived in Austin and were coming down here to do this because they were up and down I-35 and I-10, predominantly I-35. And so the question was, are they traversing between San Antonio and Austin? And my simple answer or question was, where are the cars being recovered? That will tell you quite a bit about where the offenders are at least landing at some point. And I think I had it 4 days, and I was able to nail down almost all of the vehicles in close proximity to a single apartment complex, which was a Section 8 housing complex. And then I got with some of the investigators and I said, here's your subject identifiers. Here's unique things. They went out and talked to there was twofold. So in the city of San Antonio, I don't know if it's like this still, but anybody who is on subsidized housing, all persons that are in that apartment or house have to be listed, and we had access to that information upon request. So it was a matter of, here's what we're looking for. Here's their male subjects between these ages, this race, ethnicity, build, all of these things. The guys also went out and talked to the property managers and said, this is what we're looking for. They also did surveillance on the property, identified some of the subjects just from doing visual surveillance. And I think we had all 5. We had 5. There were questions about if there were a couple more, 6 or 7, because again, they interchanged by each crime. But I think they walked warrants on all 5 of them within 3 days. Nice. And it all came down to a simple question in my mind, which is, where are the cars being recovered? Sometimes it's not necessarily what you get off of the crime scene. It's what you get like that. And I think what was so terrifying about that case, and I got an award for that case as well, was that me and I think there was two other people who were working in the TEOC, Southwest Texas Fusion, is like we tag teamed it, was you could see the progression because by the time this landed on my desk, and I think I was literally like 3 to 5 days, had subjects identified their walking warrants, and it was all off of where the car's being recovered. That's the easiest way to look at this to help you focus. You could see the progression as the cases had been, when I had mined out additional cases, you could see the progression where it was like one subject assaulted a sex worker. Then it was that subject and another subject. You could see the progression of the violence where it was a sexual, or I think it was like a robbery. Then it was a sexual assault in the robbery, sexual assault, robbery, severe aggravated assault where they were pistol whipped. And you could see the progression. And so it was, I remember telling them we're going to end up with the body because there was extreme torture involved towards the latter of the cases. And I was like, you're going to end up with the body. That's where we're progressing towards.
I find it fascinating the situation you were put in there, a little bit of office politics, right? That's a tough position for an analyst to be in. And with a fusion center, you have multiple agencies coming together. It's not one big happy family, so to speak. Thinking about it now, advice for somebody that might be put into that role.
I literally had her sergeant get into my face and start pointing in my face and who are you and what are you doing and blah, 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 blah. And my response to that was, well, I'm the only certified intelligence analyst you have in this agency and I've been asked to do it. So, and that probably wasn't the best response, but at that point I was livid because again, I had been asked to do it by my supervisor. And even my supervisor, when we got out of that meeting, he was like, keep doing what you're doing. You're not doing anything wrong. I asked you to do this because at the end of the day, it's not about who's going to take credit. It can't be about that. It cannot be about you wanting your name on something. It has to be about preventing crime, preventing a victim from being victimized or re-victimized. And because I was about to wash my hands, I was fine. Figure it out yourself. Like, why are you in my face yelling at me when I've been asked to do this? This needs to be a conversation between the two supervisors, not the four of us in a room. You with your analyst in my face, pointing, literally yelling at me about who I am and who do I think I am and what did I come here. I'm the major crimes analyst for the strategic intelligence and analytics. That's who I am. And I was asked to do this. So it's one of those where you have to maintain your integrity, which is very hard because I have a mouth sometimes. And it's very difficult because that's exactly what I wanted to say. And I wanted to say more, but I didn't. I just looked at my supervisor and I was like, this is who I am. I was asked to do this. And my supervisor still is sitting there and she was asked to do this.
Yeah.
And so at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whose name is on it. It can't be about whose name is on it. It can't be about the glory and this is my case or whatever. You have to love what you do and you have to do it for the right reasons. And at the end of the day, we are here to support law enforcement. We are here to help people from being victimized. We are here to get violent offenders or any offenders off the street. So the best I can tell somebody is keep your integrity, stand in your integrity. If you have a mouth, learn when to keep it closed. And I knew that there were additional things involved in that equation that I could have really made a stink about. And I chose not to in that moment because it could have gotten really personal really quickly for them. Yeah. And so I stayed in that integrity and was just like, this is who I am. This is what I was asked to do. And that sergeant had actually just come in. So he was being hyper defensive, I'm sure, of his analyst. But at the same time, I was asked to do it. This is what I do. This is what I've been doing. And so again, I think it's inappropriate to bring me into a room and start getting in my face. You need to have a question with my supervisor, a private conversation. Yeah. There's no easy way to handle any of that.
Yeah. Office politics are real. That's definitely something that I think I don't even think you can escape it. Every analyst is going to have a story about office politics if they work long enough.
And that's really where it gets into the longer you do this, the more difficult it becomes, I swear, because you're constantly fighting the people think that you're some sort of way. Like I've had somebody say I'm pretentious, and I'm like, I'm not pretentious. I've just been doing this a long time. There's a right way to do things, there's a wrong way to do things, and sometimes there is no right or wrong. You just got to get out of your way, shut your mouth, and see what the best way is. And maybe it's not your way. However, I don't enjoy I avoid. Do you know the little plague doctor? Have you ever seen the plague doctor from literally the plague? But I'm sure you've seen the little stuffed dolls or, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I have I think they're called squishes or something like that, little stuffed plague doctor that is on my briefcase because I tell people I avoid drama like the plague. It's not that I'm non-confrontational. I just don't find it necessary. And there's no place for it.
Yeah.
Take it somewhere else. This is not high school.
Yeah.
And so I felt in that moment, it was very much like, this is not professionally how this should be handled. And why are we having a conversation? Because I'm helping an investigator identify these subjects. It should be hey, somebody has an idea that we haven't previously thought about. Great. Not you're coming in here taking over. No, I got asked to, and I came out of the box. That's typically what I do, is I try and think outside the box. What is everybody else looking at? Because that tells me what we're not looking at. Yeah, but it turns into something it shouldn't be.
Yeah. All right. Well, very good. Well, now, okay. So now let's talk about the serial rape case then.
Okay, so that's the next one. So this one gets really interesting. Same thing happens. Same analyst. Same everything.
Jeez.
So my supervisor comes to me and says, this analyst has this, and I think there were 11 cases handed to me. I mined out 6 of those, if I remember correctly. 6 of them were believed to be the same subject. I went back, I think 2 years. I know there was 2 years worth of data. I went back 2 years. I mined out a total of 31 cases that were likely the same subject or could be the same subject. So I start working, I go down, I notify SVIU that, hey, these are the additional cases. At this point, this analyst has already been working on it. And again, why my supervisor came to me and said, we need something that this is ridiculous. I said, okay. So I went down there. I told him date, time. I did geographic profiling. I determined how the subject was moving, where they likely lived, all of these other things. And then I said, I think you have a juvenile on your hands. And it's been going on for at least 2 years. And I explained the reason behind all of that, from DNA left behind to subjects, behavior, patterns, like all of these things, right? And so one of the detective, who was the lead detective that I had just done that other serial case on, was like, great. He snapped it up. Another detective who had just been pulled off of, he had been doing undercover work for the last few years. He got put in there. He was like, this is phenomenal. We've got all kinds of additional information we didn't have. Some of this we already knew, but he was very adamant that they were adamant, the other investigators, that it was not a juvenile. And I'm like, I'm telling you, it's a juvenile. And they were like, there's no way. This is too sophisticated. This has been going on too long, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay. Well, again, this time I end up in HR. Because I am now questioning, apparently, this analyst's capabilities or whatever. And I'm like, again, I was asked to do this, and I gave you everything that I can give you. At that point, I had also identified the subject. I did not have his name, but I had the social media accounts of the people he was, and I'll use the term operating with very loosely. It's why we had, I think we were down to a 2-minute response time. He could not be found, and we had him on CCTV hiding in the parking lots of the exact parking lots that we were saturating in. So as we're moving around cars looking for him, he's moving around between them to get away from us. So all kinds of things. And I was like, look, this is this kid. This is who he's running with. I don't know his name, but this is why he's disappearing. He's literally disappearing into their apartments. He's going inside of their units. So we're responding, and that's why he's vanishing. And this is how he's operating. This is where I think he's coming out of. There was like a whole lot involved in this. And they didn't want to listen because this other analyst was assigned to it, and it was causing again, office drama with her supervisor. And I was like, you know what? I gave you everything I can give you. I've told you this is the kid. I don't know who he is. Now, this is again back before law enforcement was using facial recognition software and all of that stuff. So I'm like, I can only tell you, here's the kid and here's the people he's operating with, their social media accounts. And I did some predictive analysis all the way down to the apartment that he was going to hit next. Not only the apartment complex, but the specific unit. There was a victim that had moved out, and it was serial sexual assault. And I had this feeling based off of what I was like, I told the other analysts that were with me in SIA, I said, he's going to hit this apartment again. He's going to wait to see if a female moves in. I don't know how to explain to you what it is I know, but this is how I'm seeing everything that I'm mapping out and the behaviors. And he's not doing like one apartment, then the next, and then he's not making a circular pattern. It's not necessarily spiral, but it's all in the same area in the way that he's doing this. So I took them in my personal vehicle and we went out to the apartment complex. This is in the medical area. And I'm laughing now, but at the time, So we go out and I showed them the exact apartment. I said, this is where he's going to hit next. I guarantee you, because if you look at the layout of the apartment complexes, this is why he's choosing victims in the late night hours. These are in the medical center. This is nurses. This is women who are getting off of work very late. If you look at the locations of the apartments, stuff like this, well, he walks in front of me while we're standing there.
Wow.
So apparently he had a vehicle that had come in, a complex right in front of us. I don't remember if they were right in front of us or behind us, but we went in, we parked, that truck went around, and they were looking at it. The person in the truck was looking at us when we were walking, and I was like, And one of the analysts who was with me, two of them were senior analysts who had been in the field for a couple decades. One of them was a former officer. I called her my work mom, Betty. Her husband, who was an officer, had been killed in the line of duty, and so she was very apprehensive and aware. This is my work mom. So she's in her 50s, and I think I was in my 20s, 30s at the time. I don't know. I was somewhere in that. And so anyways, we go around, I'm showing them, I'm like, look, this is where he's ditching out. This is how this is happening. I want them to see on the ground level exactly what I've been trying to explain to these people in SVIU. And because I'm mad, I'm at this point, more sexual assaults are going to happen because you don't want to look at the subject that I'm telling you that it is, simply because you think it's not possible that it's a juvenile. And long story short, he walks in front of me. We make eye contact, and we're talking within like feet of me. He looks at me. I look at him. He takes off jogging. I take off jogging right behind him.
Oh, wow.
I wanted to know who he was. And then we get around the corner. He disappears on me. And I couldn't figure out, and I'm like, that I know of, he doesn't have any friends in the front of this unit. So where did he go? Well, right about that time, the truck that had followed us, I don't remember if they were right in front of us or right behind us, but that truck peeled out. And I'm like, he just got in that damn truck. That's what happened. He jumped in that truck. So now looking back, we wondered, was the subject telling him, hey, there's some females here looking at that apartment, the one that he had just hit, that the victim had just moved out and it was vacant. And so at this point, Betty's screaming at me. She's panicking because I took off. And my work aunt, who's also in her 50s in high heels because she dresses like Audrey Hepburn, like it was a whole thing. And then my poor young apprentice who's in her early 20s says, oh my God, what is this woman doing? So we jump in my vehicle and we go looking. I went looking for him. I was like, it's him. I'm telling you, that is the kid I've been saying it is. We get around like a block or two over, there's a shopping center. And I'm like, where did that truck go? That truck came in here for a specific reason and popped out at the right reason. Well, he pops out between the fence and those back sides of those buildings and starts walking through the parking lot. So I park and we watch him. That truck that had peeled out had gone and sat in that parking lot. He ran from, well, I'll say run from me. He took off running and I went after him, however you want to perceive that. He ran those couple blocks, walked through that parking lot and went and got in that same truck. I took a picture of him. And I called him Smurf shoes, blue shoes, because he had on these bright blue Smurf shoes. Yeah. So we started following the truck. At that point, Betty's screaming at me. She's, we're not doing this. We need to go back. This is dangerous. And I knew, and I know it sounds crazy now, the following the truck, yes, was dangerous. But here's what I knew about the subject at the time. Every case, any female that in any way remotely put up resistance to him, he bolted. He couldn't handle any form, even when he had a knife in a few of the instances because it progressed. if he did not have complete control and compliance, he freaked out and fled. So that told me chasing him, yes, not the brightest idea in the world, but I knew at the end of the day, if there's any form of resistance, he's not going to fight me. He's going to freak out. He's going to run. He doesn't have the constitution to stand up to somebody who's in any way standing up to him. So I took the picture. We went back to headquarters. My boss at that point was like, "So where have you been?" And I'm like, so what had happened was we went out there to look at where this was so they could explain to them and show them what's going to happen and where I think he was going to hit next. And he walked in front of me and I explained all this. My supervisor is mortified. And I'm like, I was just doing a site assessment and where I thought he was going to hit next. I didn't think the man was actually going to walk in front of me. Long story short, they didn't listen to me, that's how this game goes. Sometimes you don't get listened to. He proceeded to assault for an additional, that was in January. He was arrested in June 8th, I want to say, something like that, June 30th, June 8th. Yes. And one of the lead detectives, like I said, the one that I got originally, we both got pushed off the case to let the other ones handle it. He called me, he said, "They've got me out here sitting to do a DNA pickup." And I was like, "Really?" He said, "It's the kid you said it was." And I said, "Are you kidding me?" He said, "No." And he told me where he was and where they were waiting to collect the DNA. They were waiting on discarded stuff. And sure enough, within 24 hours, they had a DNA hit. It was him. And he had been offending when he was arrested. I think he was getting ready to turn 18. He had started offending at 15, 16. And I didn't get any recognition on that case. And again, it's like I said, it can't be about that. I was so angry that, in my opinion, women were sexually assaulted because you didn't want to listen to me, because I wasn't the primary analyst, and because I was telling you that I thought you needed to look at this juvenile. And in your mind, there's no way a juvenile could have done this. Yeah. So that was a hard one.
Yeah. No, that is fascinating. When you first said that you were doing a site visit, I assumed you went with an officer. I didn't know you went with 3 other analysts.
Correct. That is correct. In my personal vehicle. Again, looking back, it wasn't, but it also wasn't a bad area. It was broad daylight. We're in the medical center. It's a nice area. There was a lot of things. And I did get an accolade or some recognition from my supervisor after that, because he was like, you really did deal with this, and this should have not happened. And I'm like, I know it shouldn't have, but again, it's not about receiving the award or any of those things. It is, I was angry. I was pretty angry at that point, because I felt like there was people who were victimized who shouldn't have been victimized simply because you didn't want to listen. You didn't want to consider an alternative hypothesis. You stuck to that story or the one that you thought. So it was.
Do you know how many cases were in between January
6.
when you saw him? 6.
6. I know exactly how many it was, because I have said that there are 6 victims who shouldn't have existed.
Oh, it's awful.
So, yep, it was not good. That case jaded me quite a bit. Again, not because I didn't get recognition or anything like that, but it shouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
And when you do everything you can and you present the data, you present not only the data analysis, but I'm giving you full-fledged actionable intelligence. Here's the person, here are they identified, here's the social network analysis that has been done on these individuals, here's how he's disappearing into these apartments, and our response times are so low, we're saturating areas, I gave you the quote-unquote filling of the intelligence gaps. All I need you to do is go out and ID this kid. And what ended up happening was I found out that it wasn't even my recommendation that they look at this kid. His name came up because a officer who was familiar with one of the apartment complexes had identified the subject and told SVIU or whomever, hey, you need to look at this kid, because he had done something like slap somebody on the butt while playing basketball, like some woman that was just out there. He assaulted her by slapping her on the butt and making an inappropriate comment, something to that nature. And so that officer who responded to that call for service or whatever said, hey, you might want to look at this kid. So it wasn't even my recommendation. It wasn't even the picture that I took of him. I took a picture of him in that parking lot, identifiable. It wasn't any of that led to them deciding to do a DNA analysis. It was because of an officer. And it was just like, I don't know if it's because I was an analyst. I don't know if it's because I was female. I think it was a combination of a lot of things, which included predominantly, unfortunately, the politics of I was not the analyst originally assigned to it. And there were other extra office relationships that probably played a part in that. And so
That's a real thing too.
it is,
For those that maybe
unfortunately,
need the
it is.
profession, that's a thing too. Oh,
It is unfortunate, but that was, yeah, that case to this day, every June comes around. I want to say it was June 8th. Every June comes around, and I'm like, I get a little bit angry again because again, I know there's victims out there that shouldn't have been victims. And it, in my opinion, could have been preventable had we just had anybody just taken the time to look at the kid from when I said in January, this is your kid, and this is why the Texas Department of Public Safety's suspect sketch does not look like him.
Mm.
There's a reason. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
This is Robert Aboumitri, a retired analyst with the RCMP. If I have an advice for analysts, one advice, tell the story of the data. Do not tell the story of somebody who wants a story to be told. Even if it's your boss, even if it's the chief of police, and they tell you to show something and as a result of your analysis, do not. Stay true to what's in front of you. Let the data speak to you, and you be the voice of that data.
My name is Megan Cruz. I'm the crime analysis supervisor at Richmond Police. And my public service announcement is knowing how much the data and the information that crime analysts touch applies to everything the department does. Everything from media responses to patrol allocation to solving crimes to overtime allocation, that commanders really should be tapping their crime analysts before they make any kind of decisions. Everything should be evidence-based and data-driven.
Hello, my name is Greg Thomas. One phrase that annoys me that analysts say is that they say that when they introduce themselves, they say, I am just an analyst. You should be proud of your profession and the field and the job that you do, and don't say you're just an analyst.
It's kind of hard to segue away from that, but I guess I'm just going to do it. But so then from there, you end up leaving the Fusion Center and actually get out of analysis and become an instructor.
Correct.
What was the reason for the decision for that?
It was a threefold. So we had one of our detectives was, and I'll say it bluntly, was executed out front of our headquarters. That was Ben Marconi. And so that happened, and then the whole situation happened with the serial subject, and then we had another officer killed in the line of duty. I was coming out of the Texas Gang Investigators Conference, and we had a call drop, and it was 2 officers shot during a traffic stop. And it was just the combination, really, of it. I could have dealt with a lot. I was so angry. I know it sounds ridiculous, but I was so angry over office politics being more important than 6 victims being victimized. And then I was like questioning, why did I even go into this field? Because like I've said, and I'll say it again, integrity has to be number one. And this can't be about names and plaques and awards. And it has to be about, at the end of the day, preventing crime where we can prevent it, taking offenders off the streets when we can take them off the streets. And it doesn't matter who does it, as long as it's done right, done ethically, and done quickly. And so when office politics plays a part in that, I had enough. And then when Miguel was killed, it was just like, what are we doing? What am I doing? And why am I here? So I ended up going to teach, and I did that for 1.5 years, while at the same time I was driving from the Austin area down to San Antonio this entire time, which is quite a trek. It was like 72 miles or something one way. And I told myself, I was like, I'm going to wait for an Austin position to open up. I wanted to move up into that area anyways. I really wanted to get out of San Antonio. I had been followed home. I had bricks thrown at my window. I had my vehicle shot at. The brick thing that happened, I was coming out of headquarters. And so there was a lot of things that I was just like, it was just I need to take a break.
Yeah.
And I'll wait for an Austin position to open. I went to go teach for 1 year. That was my objectives, was to teach for 1 year, until an Austin position opened up. And then I got pregnant with twins. And so
Mm.
that turned into, well, I guess I'm not going to go into the field again right this moment.
Yeah.
And so I ended up teaching an extra semester. And then, and then I left the field for 5 years when the twins were born.
So yeah, talk a little bit just about the 5-year gap and just what you learned through that whole process. And again, maybe some advice for those that are going through something similar of being away from the field or out of work for a little bit and then trying to make that comeback.
Well, there's a few things. I remember when I went, when the twins were born, it was only supposed to be a year. I was only supposed to teach for a year, wait for an Austin position to open. There were a few agencies who said, hey, we've got positions coming open. We really want you to, obviously you have to go through the application process, but they were like, we really want you to apply. We want you to come up here. I said, okay. And then getting pregnant with the twins, and then the twins were born premature. And it was like, okay, well, I'm just going to take a year. And for other reasons, I ended up being out for 5 years because of the twins. And I didn't know if I was going to go back. And that was mainly because the twins are disabled. And so it was one of those, I don't know what that looks like. I know I love my field. I know that I continue to help on cases, numerous different agencies, local, state, and federal, actually 2 other governments as well. Rural Mounted Police and Scotland Yard, interestingly enough. People who had reached out to me who said, hey, can you help on this? And I'm like, yeah, I can. So the biggest advice I have is that you never know when something can happen. You could be employed today and something happened and you are suddenly out of the field tomorrow. So, and you may not know if or when you're going to go back. You may think you're never going to go back, or you may think I'm going to go back tomorrow, and it ends up being 5 years.
Yeah.
I did maintain a lot of my professional relationships, my mentors, the officers, agents, and analysts that I had worked closely with. I also have this weird policy. I don't befriend people at work usually. I keep the work at work and office days at the office and personal relationships outside. And that's just and I'm not saying that people that do mix those two don't have integrity. I just like to be very cautious, especially as a female working in a male-dominated industry, that there is in no way even perception of any inappropriate or extracurricular activities or anything like that. So I did maintain certain relationships. Like I said, Jason's like my brother, and that had been going on since OIG when I was with them, and he mentored me in a lot of ways. So keep your personal relationships with those that you are actually close with. To this day, I did have them in a folder, but I keep all my business cards. And I still to this day have business cards from, I'm not even joking, 2006. So I take them, I write on the back where I met the person, when, all of those things so that I remember, because oftentimes it's just a card I collect. So I continue with your relationships, keep your professional memberships if you can. I didn't do that. I let those slide because I was like, I don't know if I'm going to go back into the field, when I'm going to go back into the field. So keep your professional memberships, keep up with your associates. I recently got a LinkedIn. I did have one many moons ago. Keep that up if you have one. Move with the assumption that you're going to go back. And so you want to skip as little amount of time as possible. And the best way to do that is to keep facilitating the certain aspects as if you were in the field, because you don't know. It could be a month, it could be 5 years. So that would be the biggest thing, is even when you think it's going to be a while, don't just let things slide, because you never know.
Yeah.
Right, no,
And
that's
when
good.
you decide, when you do decide to come back, you still have some foundation there. When I came back to Hays County Sheriff's Office, everybody was like, Hays County Sheriff's Office, are you kidding me? You're going to go back to a small agency after everything that you've done and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, well, I had the twins and I'm like, I have to stay close to where I live. I've got small children, all of these things. It's not like my daughter, who was like all over the place. That kid went to 5 elementary schools. We moved and I was working and all the things. The twins are a whole different story. And it's one of those where I also was well aware that I was underpaid. I was well aware that it wasn't in my mind to step back. I love working patrol. I know a lot of people want to go into investigative analysis, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I also love patrol. It is bread and butter. It is where the intelligence information is. It is on the streets. It is not behind a computer screen. I think there's also a lot of people that I see out there, and I won't just say see, I get contacted quite a bit on LinkedIn, particularly from college kids or those new to the industry who want advice and how to get into the field and do this, that, and the other thing. And that's like I tell them, start where you can start.
Yeah.
And everywhere has something for you. You will learn something. You will find something. And so when I came back to Hays County Sheriff's Office, the sheriff that's there now is a new sheriff. We had Sheriff Cutler, who had been there for some time. Then now there's Anthony Hippolito, who I think is a great sheriff personally. And I think he's a good man. I think he's trying to do good things. It's nothing against the sheriff's office. It's a sheriff's office. They're small, of course. It's not the seventh largest city in the U.S. Of course it's not. It's not apples to apples, but at the end of the day, you're still doing the same job, just on a different scale.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point with your advice of just get in where you can get in, because there's been plenty of analysts on this show that started out as admin assistant or 911 dispatcher or records, or just getting their foot in the door in terms of inside the police department and working their way to analysis.
And that's the difference is I think what a lot of people don't understand is that the more the analyst has become a buzzword and every agency suddenly wants to have an analyst, people are being taken out of secretarial positions and being told that they're an analyst, but they're not given the direction in how to do that. They're like, okay, I'm an analyst now. Now, what do you want me to do? And so you do. If this is a very competitive field, the jobs are exploding in a lot of ways, but there's also so much competition because there's so many people, particularly those that have entered the field in alternative ways, like what you're talking about, where I was a dispatcher, and because I was doing very similar to real-time crime center analysis, now I'm working as a crime analyst with my agency. And so I think there's something to be said for just get your foot in the door.
Yeah.
Get in the door somewhere and start building your skill set. And when the time comes, if you're one of those people that has to take time out of the field for whatever reason, don't ever turn your nose up at something. If there's not an ethical issue, if there's not an integrity issue, if there's not something with that agency that makes you go, I don't want any part of that, and I have said no to agencies for that reason, actually. If that's not there, you're going to learn something.
Yeah. Nice.
If you're willing to go seek it.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, let's move on then. I do want to talk about IALEIA. And as I mentioned in your intro, you are the Strategic Outreach Committee Chair. And it's my understanding that is a committee that you pitched. Is that correct?
It is. And so there was elections that were gearing up. This was 2024. Yes, I have to think. 24. And one of the things that I noticed is that I was lucky. So Steve Young, who is the mentor I had in college, he's deceased now, but he had actually told me about IALEIA. So when I entered the field, I felt lucky. Like I had this. I assumed other people knew about it, and they didn't. There seems to be a discrepancy between what colleges are teaching and what actual analysts are doing in their professional associations and all of those things. And so I think that's another reason these college kids are having a difficult time breaking into the field. So one of the things that I noticed when the election board was going on is I had emailed and I said something to the effect of, hey, like I have an idea for an additional position. And it wasn't for me. My idea was not for me to do this. This was just because I have a background and an understanding of marketing and stuff like that. And I love projects and I'm great with that sort of thing. I thought, let me throw them this idea, which was strategic outreach, starting from, there's a variety of things, which is, what are you doing to connect with your members? What are you offering them? How are you building your chapters? How are your chapters reaching out to other agencies? Because I have analysts who I'm mentoring. Some of these are college kids now, but all of them were entering the field. They graduated, they were entering the field. I think all 5 out of the 7 at the time were in the first 2 years and 2 had just graduated. Did not know what IALEIA was. And you've got 5 people who've now been in this field for 2 years and they don't know what IALEIA is. That's a problem. How are you an intelligence analyst in law enforcement and you don't know what this is? And so I said, hey, there needs to be some beefing up of marketing, and not marketing in a gross way, but marketing in there's a professional association that's here to support you, that's able to help you navigate what to learn as an analyst and how to progress in your career path, and connecting you with other like-minded individuals and people who maybe specialize in the area that you want to specialize in. So I pitched out this thing and they got me in contact with Phil Powell, who's the vice president. And they were like, great. He set up a meeting with me. So I pitched it and I was like, look, here's like all of the ideas that I have and the ways that it can be done and articulated in a way that's not overwhelming, but also can reach as many people as possible so that analysts know you have a professional association here to support you. We're here, whether you're a college kid trying to break into the field, you're new to the field, vetted, all of those things. At the end of the meeting, he was like, and I was like, I said something to the effect of, I'm not asking for me to do this. I just think this would be great. And he's, oh no, you're the right person to do it. I'm like, oh, okay. And so one thing developed. I really like Phil, by the way.
Yes.
Phenomenal VP. Everybody that I've met with IALEIA's executive board have been really great people. And I can honestly say that there isn't anybody that I've met that I'm like, holy guacamole. They really are genuinely good people who want to see good things for analysts, officers, agents, etc., that are in the intelligence field. So that's how it started. And then I ended up getting committee. I have a committee member right now. I lost my other one. So if you are interested and you are listening to this and strategic outreach sounds interesting to you, make sure to let us know, because I'm looking for just a few committee members who really are passionate about strategic outreach and making sure that we as analysts are supported, and everything from education to networking to career development, whatever that looks like. And building up chapters. It's not a matter of a money grab, it's a matter of support. Think of it as your personal support group.
Yeah. So this gets into people, obviously, that aren't currently members, but could be members, right? Yes. And bringing them in to the association.
Yeah. And that's, I think, one of the biggest things that got me is to have 5 people I'm mentoring at this particular time who are actively in the field, have been in the field for a few years in law enforcement in this country, and don't know who you are. And I understand they don't want to do the icky marketing and all that, but in the conversations we've had, and they're well aware of this, we're redesigning the website right now. Olivia Moore is fantastic. I really who we have in place to getting things done, getting the website updated, looking at what we can do to bolster chapters. And again, it's not about building just a mass number of members. We're all on that same page. What we're looking for is to reach out to the people who want some sort of support from a professional association, whether you're new, whether you're in college, whatever that may be, to say, hey, you've got a support network. Here's training. Here's this. We're looking at quite a bit of stuff right now. It's not just as simple as membership. We're revamping training and websites and all the things.
Yeah. One of the frustrations that I have is that some people will complain that they're getting too many emails. And so you mentioned marketing. Marketing's about repetition, right? To some people, they may have seen this commercial 20 times, but to some people, they've never seen it before.
Yeah.
And so, unfortunately, I feel you talked about the ickiness side of marketing, but I feel that a lot of associations will stop short because they'll start getting complaints that somebody's getting too much email, or they're getting too much of this or too much of that. When you're not the target audience, we realize that you know who IALEIA is. We're trying to identify the people that don't know who IALEIA is.
And I think I know for a fact that was something brought up, is that we don't want to jam people's mailboxes and we don't want to overwhelm them. And I've explained and I've given them email pathways and things like that, where I'm like, it's all in how you design it. You can't just mass blast emails to everybody with the same email. It depends on where they are in their journey. So looking at member journeys is one of the things I designed out. So whether somebody's in college, whether somebody's new to the profession, they've been in the profession for X amount of time, what level of involvement are you interested in? What are you interested in? Are you only here for training? Do you only want to be a member and you don't want training opportunities? You don't want all these other things that we're looking at. And I know that's another reason we're bolstering the website and what's on it, because at the end of the day, the association is very passionate about supporting analysts, officers, agents. It's more than just analysts at this point. We know that. And it's not just law enforcement at this point. There's so many people who are involved in this association who are in no way law enforcement.
Yeah.
So it's about making those very specific member journeys and bolstering their membership profiles, which is something that they're working on right now. I gave them quite a bit of stuff, and I know they've worked on quite a bit of stuff, so that when somebody goes in, being able to track their certification eligibility, being able to track their certification progress, being able to look at what upcoming trainings may or may not be affiliated with IALEIA, looking at what senior members or intermediate members have free trainings, not just paid trainings. There's all kinds of things that we're looking at. And I shouldn't say just looking at, we're actively moving on. It just takes time, especially when you have an association that's spread out across the world, literally.
That's a good point about the type of member, because I just had Kelly Kimsey on. We did the IALEIA conference preview. And one of my biggest tip is pay your $50 to become a member, and then you get $200 off the conference fee, right? And so there's some people that they're just becoming members just for that, just for the discount off of maybe training or discount off the conference. And that's all the farther they want to go in terms of that island, right? So that's a good point of just capturing all that information and trying to work with analysts and what their individual goals are.
Yeah, that's a big point that we're operating most of the design off of right now for website and marketing and just all of the things. So the strategic outreach chair, myself, I basically hit all of the portfolios. There's not really much that I'm doing that isn't going to touch some portfolio, whether it's professional standards or the chapters or the website technology. It's about marketing in a way intelligence driven. There you go.
There you go.
There we have it. It's marketing in a way that's just, again, you're not just mass blasting. You know who your target audience is, whether that's somebody who doesn't know you exist, all the way down to somebody who's been a member for 10 years and has no idea that they qualify for Seek a Lifetime if they take the exam. Like, there's a lot of, I'm finding a lot of members who don't know what is available to them through membership other than I get $200 off at the conference. Well, there's more than that.
Yeah.
There's more than that. So let's talk about it. Yeah.
Well, then, very good. Let's finish up with personal interest. And you describe yourself as an excited reader.
Yes. So I love to read. I have a home library. I actually this weekend, very exciting, I just did the Austin Book Trail, which is what most people call people go to bar crawls. I don't do that. That's not my jam, but I will definitely do a book trail. So I love to read. Most people are interested that I'm finding. I get asked all the time about fiction. I don't read fiction. It's just a thing for me. I don't read fiction. I don't read fantasy. I don't all that. Dive really deeply into like old esoteric and occult manuals and religious teachings and stuff like that, sociology, psychology. I'm interested. I'll read things about, I'm particularly interested in Jung, and my favorite book ever is Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, if you're familiar with it. And so I love Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, which is a fiction, but that goes back to high school. And so does Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. But I dig, again, it goes back into the psychology and the understanding why people do what they do and think what they think and believe what they believe. To me, it's just fascinating. So when I did this book trail this weekend, it was funny because I was looking at the bookstores ahead of time. And I'm like, if they're only selling new books, I'm not interested, because my philosophy is, and I understand a bookstore's got to survive, so they have to have new things on the shelf. I don't want to buy something that I can buy at Amazon. I want to find the stuff that's out of print, first editions, second editions, hard to find, that sort of stuff. So I ended up, my favorite author is Manly P. Hall. And some of you may be familiar with him, but I'm very excited. I found a book which is on Freemasonry with the ancient Egyptians, and it's a first edition. It's very old. I was very excited when I found it because, again, it's a Manly P. Hall book, and it goes, again, into the whole understanding why people think what they think and where these things come from. And I'm fascinated by just the way the mind works and why people believe what they believe and do what they do. And it's fascinating to me. So, yes, I am an avid reader with a home library filled with probably very odd books to the average person, I imagine.
Well,
people look in and they're like, well, that's interesting.
Well, you're finding value where that's off the beaten path, which is basically a lot of the stories that you've shared here today, right?
Yeah. And it's also interesting. So I've always been very interested, and it goes back to the clinical psychology side. And when I originally wanted to work with terrorists, to be specific, I also wanted to work with those that are involved, more specifically cult leaders as opposed to cult followers, because again, to me, it's fascinating the type of personality that can be swayed or sway people to do things. It's interesting when you get into the belief systems and the thought processes and the way in which they speak or move. It's very much an enchantment type thing when you see it. You're enchanting people is essentially what you're doing.
Yeah, no, that's why all those documentaries are so popular these days.
I know. And I'm that person that it's funny because I only have Hulu for the explicit purpose of the History Channel. That's it. That's it. The twins may be disabled, but they love their History Channel, black and white. They love World War II stuff. So that's just how I am. And yeah, I'm an avid reader, but I read weird stuff that the average person would be like, I have questions. Me too, which is why I'm reading this.
Oh, very good, Brandy. This has been great. Thank you for your time here today. This is great to hear your journey and your perspective, and wish you the best of luck with the strategic outreach with IALEIA. So our last question to the show is words to the world. This is where you can promote any idea that you wish. Brandy, what are your words to the world?
Be a lifelong learner. I think that's the most important thing as an analyst is I tell people pieces of paper don't mean anything. I have a master's degree. It's a piece of paper. It's an expensive piece of paper. The bachelor's degrees, expensive pieces of paper. Did they teach me something? Yeah, they did. But I've learned more in the field and by seeking out personal experiences and seeking out opportunities, whether that's through a mentor, through a class, through reading. I'm reading another book right now by Jerry Ratcliffe, and I'm rereading it actually. Be a lifelong learner. Never assume that you know everything. The moment you think you know everything is the moment you no longer belong in this field. Know your limits. Know when you don't know something and go find the answer. And don't be afraid to say, I don't know. The answer of I will find an answer is just as acceptable.
Very good. Well, I leave every guest with you've given me just enough to talk bad about you later. But I do appreciate you being on the show, Brandy. Thank you so much, and you be safe.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for making it to the end of another episode of Analyst Talk with Jason Elder. You can show your support by sharing this and other episodes found on our website at www.leapodcasts.com. If you have a topic you would like us to cover or have a suggestion for our next guest, please send us an email at leapodcasts@gmail.com. Till next time, analysts, keep talking.